What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Radical Roots podcast, where we dig deep to reach high. And of course, always progress through action. I'm your co-host, Payron Baxter.
I am your co-host, Ram Sandoval. Good evening, everyone.
And Ron, we are now officially 582 days away from midterms. So just a hop, skip, and a jump.
It seems like a long time, but it is not a long time. We got to start preparing now. Um, you know, there's a lot at stake, but there are some big elections happening this week, actually,
That's right.
nationwide. So we have a couple special elections down in Florida for the House. Those are expected. Those are Trump districts. However, they are tightening up, and there's also the the Wisconsin Supreme Court. That is this week as well. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about that with our guest, and we'll also talk about it in the second half. And then Louisiana they had some elections last night they had 4 amendments, what people are calling MAGA amendments. All 4 failed with 60 something percent, about 60% across the board, which is in Louisiana is a red state. So
as Gary Chambers put it, he said it was a political beatdown.
Yeah. And and there was one other piece of big news this week. Elise Stefanik, we'll also talk about her in the second half. But she was going to be in Trump's cabinet. They've asked her to hold off and be a warrior, so to speak. So she is no longer going to the cabinet. They need to maintain her seat, and that they think it's going to be it could be close. So that's where we're at. But
I mean, there's nothing better than to see the GOP spiraling out. So I think to see them having to sweat and pull back some folks like Lisa Stefanik from being the UN ambassador, it does bode well for the future, right? Like, it shows that the people are speaking back, the people are rejecting their very extremist agenda, and they want a future that looks like America. So and speaking of midterms, speaking of future elections. Let's bring in our guest, which I'm so excited to have on. She also will be on the ballot come midterms. It is Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls, the woman herself. Folks, give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Justice Earls? How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I've heard you speak a few times, and every time I've heard you speak, I've always been floored just by your story, your background, and your vision. These are things that I think a lot of politicians usually don't have, or not say you're a politician, but someone who does get elected to political office. I'm not saying you're out there trying to, spin people and whatnot, but because you're someone who is of the law, if you will. And it's always been very inspiring to me. And I knew when we started this show that you were a name that I wanted to tap. And then when I saw you at our winter SEC meeting, I was like, man, I got to grab him. And I talked to you for a few minutes, and I'm so honored that you're on our show today. And I've told my co-host Ram so much about you, so please don't disappoint. I'm joking. I'm messing with you.
Right, that's a pretty big buildup.
Well, thank you for joining us. And I moved to North Carolina mid last year, and I've been getting to know all of the elected officials, candidates, everything. So getting immersed, and I'm excited to talk to you tonight.
Great. Well, I don't shy away from the fact that I am a politician. I'm running in a partisan election, and while I believe that it's vitally important that in any decision that I make and implying the law, I'm not bound by any partisan influences or interests. But to get my office, to be able to have this role, I need to go out and talk to the 7 million plus registered voters in North Carolina, and that's what politicians do. So
7 million voters, and you got to raise about how much money?
Well, I've been watching very carefully what's happening in Wisconsin, and the millions of dollars spent in that race just goes up by the day. I think they're going to hit 100 million by Tuesday. And our races here in North Carolina are not quite that expensive. And interestingly also, because we have 8-year terms, and because people don't think of us as folks that should have town halls or something. It's actually really hard to stay in contact with voters and to stay in
Mm.
over that period. So I ran last time in 2018, which was the first time that the North Carolina Supreme Court race was partisan in a while. Historically, it had been kind of flipped back and forth between being partisan and nonpartisan. But the Republican General Assembly passed a law making
Our favorite General Assembly.
making it partisan. They actually passed 5 different laws that year,
Hmm.
which they thought would help their Republican incumbent win re-election. And I won't go, bore you with all that history, but to answer your question as to how much money I need to raise, when I ran the first time, I raised $1.5 million, very much a grassroots campaign. Over 90% of my contributions were $100 or less.
Mhm.
And this in 2024, my colleague Allison Riggs, who won by 734 votes out of about 5 million people actually voted,
Mhm.
she raised over $5 million. And
Mm.
so even though that was a presidential election year, I think I'm going to have to
Yeah.
get to that point or more just to
Right.
be competitive and to be able to communicate with voters.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think you can do it. I think there's hopefully things like this podcast and us getting the information out there. It'll get people excited to be like, you know what, I'm going to speak about it, because something me and Ram said during our prep call earlier today was, now is the time. Obama said we have to move with the urgency of now. And I thoroughly agree with that. And like, not just waiting till September or October to get folks kind of informed about candidates and these judge races. Let them know now. Let them know in March of 2025 about the election in 2026, and how they can get invested now and how they can get aligned right now. Because if it's a people movement, and if we have a people-centered movement, the people will always out-organize the money. I'm a thorough believer of that. But before we get into some of the other stuff, if you could, Justice Earls, just give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you're about. I mean, I know you, I love you, but I think the folks out there, they want to know, right? We're bringing you
Sure.
on, so give us a little bit about Justice Earls.
Right. Well, before I ran in 2018, I had been a civil rights attorney for 30 years.
Mm.
So I was representing clients in all sorts of types of civil rights cases. So, this would be plaintiffs who sued for employment discrimination. I did a lot of voting rights cases. I represented families of people who were killed by police. That work I did primarily from 1988 to 1998, which was an era before we had cell phones with video cameras on them. So
Wow.
proving what happened was a real challenge in those cases. I also did criminal defense work, both state and federal, misdemeanors and felonies, did jury trials. So it's really a civil rights attorney, basically. And I do like to share with people why I wanted to be a civil rights attorney, and
Yeah.
that's comes from the experience of growing up in a family. My father was Black, my mother was white. When they met in Missouri in the late 1950s, it was both risking my father's life to
Mm.
be with the woman he fell in love with, and it was illegal for them to be married. So they moved out to Seattle, where they felt a little more measure of safety. And I don't exaggerate. I mean, if you look in the history books, and these days this might be history that people don't want us to talk about,
Or,
but
or, or, or they might get erased.
well, they would like it to be lost in the midst of time. But there were, lynchings, and there were people persecuted in a variety of ways, and in particular Black men who were accused of being with white women. So there's no doubt that I don't think it's an exaggeration.
No.
The courage that my parents had to follow their hearts. But so growing up, I felt like the law was a way to open up doors to opportunity, and I wanted to be a part of breaking down barriers. And I didn't expect, as it turned out, that I think I really came out of law school in 1988 at kind of the high water mark of when the courts were willing to protect against racial discrimination, and most of the court opinions since then. So 1986 was a big year for voting rights, because that was the year that the Supreme Court decided a case that really opened up the doors to
Mm,
creating majority Black or majority minority districts that would empower Black voters to elect their candidates of choice.
okay.
And since that point, there's just been continued retrenchment
Hmm.
and pushing back. So my career ended up being trying to defend the gains that lawyers ahead of me had achieved. And after the 2016 election, it seemed clear to me that the federal courts may not be the most welcoming place for the claims of the clients and communities that I had been representing all my career. So I thought, well, our state constitution is also a source of individual rights, and it might be useful to have someone on the state courts with a civil rights background. So I ran as a first-time candidate and ran statewide in a year that Democrats swept all the statewide offices. Like, let's remember that.
Hmm.
Like we in North Carolina here, we like to, we Democrats, we look back proudly to when we went for Obama
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
first time, but we also turned the state blue in 2018. It
Hmm.
was what they call a blue moon election, which doesn't mean blue for Democrats. But it does mean that there was no U.S. Senate race. It was a midterm,
Right.
no U.S. Senate race on the ballot, and so the state Supreme Court was actually top of the ticket. It was the only, it was the highest statewide office on the ballot, and then the other statewide offices were 3 Court of Appeal seats, and all 4 of those seats went to Democrats in 2018.
Mm.
So the real question, I think, will be for 2026: can Democrats organize and turn out Republicans in 2026 the way they did in 2018?
Yeah, I think also like historically, the judiciary has always been a very difficult or almost a third rail for the Democratic Party to try to coalesce voters around. Right? It's always easy to say there's a big federal monster we have to fight, or there's a governor we have to fight, but rarely is it this galvanizing force around the judiciary. And I haven't really seen that as it relates to like kind of boots on the ground, like large scale visibility. I think now it's usually in response to what's happening. Like we used Wisconsin, for example. We spoke about that earlier. Like, oh, look what Elon Musk is dumping into that Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. Look what happened prior to that with Janet Protasiewicz in Wisconsin, and how they were trying to basically impeach her before she even took the bench, right? Like these are tactics that I think are very alarming and should wake most people up. And I always say, like, this is a continuation of the January 6th insurrection, where Ron DeSantis firing prosecutors down in Florida, Janet Protasiewicz, this dumping this money into this Wisconsin Supreme Court race. This is a downstream effect, a less violent, if you will, part of the insurrection, but it's all part of this trying to shape the country to be what they want it to look like. And I think my fear is one side has an absolute idea what they want this country to look like, and where they want this country to go. And the other side is like, let's just respond. So what would you be looking for as it relates to support? What would you be looking for as it relates to organization, even around in your perfect world, like for a judiciary race, for a judicial race? What would you think that would look like?
Um, so that's a good question. In my ideal world would involve very different rules around campaign finance to begin with.
Hmm.
And North Carolina is a state where at one point in time we had public financing for our statewide judicial offices. And
Mm.
when that happened, it was the first time that women were actually elected to our statewide courts. So when I say
Okay.
statewide, I mean Court of Appeals and
Right.
Supreme Court. If you look pre-public financing, almost all the candidates were men, but post-public financing, more women could run and get that benefit of getting public financing for their campaign. So there's a lot I would change, but if I take the current rules as they are, assume I can't change anything about our election laws, I think what I think most important is that we have 3 strong elements of a political movement. So I
Mm.
do believe the Democratic Party matters. We need a strong Democratic Party. That is the way that a lot of people want to funnel their political engagement, but not everyone does. So the
Right.
second component we really need is a strong, I call it, well, C3, C4, but the nonprofit, nonpartisan, but advocacy community that can play a really important role in educating voters, mobilizing voters without, I think when that sector is strong, the more informed electorate we have, the better outcome in our judicial races.
That's right.
So the C3 and C4 world is really important. And then the candidate's own campaign.
Mm.
I don't, if I can raise the kind of money that is floating around in the Wisconsin race, and so now I'm talking, 40-50 million dollars, then I could have the
Couch cushion
ground
stuff.
games.
It's just couch cushion money. That's all. Simple stuff, folks.
But the reality is I don't think I can raise that. And I will tell you that when I ran in 2018, I believed I could create a grassroots campaign based on folks in community that would then continue to be engaged, right? Like I didn't want to bring people in to canvas
Right.
for me who then go back home, wherever
Poof.
that is,
Right.
and the infrastructure doesn't stay in place.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found was that it's such a big state, so many different communities. As a judicial candidate without huge staff, right? I mean, and that's the other thing money gets you as a
That's right.
candidate is staff. But without staff, I could not really build local infrastructure. So to some degree, there's some good political organizations in various places across the state.
Yep.
Durham has the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People. Charlotte has the Black Political Caucus. There are PACs in Winston-Salem and Greensboro, and some down east, Bladen County. There are different places where folks have organized politically to support candidates, but I couldn't build that kind of infrastructure as a candidate, but I do think it's very much needed. So the real question is, to my mind, how do we build resources both in the advocacy community that's nonpartisan and within the Democratic Party to have that kind of local infrastructure so that statewide candidates can their messages can get out. And I think that we forget what incredible social capital we all have, right?
Hello.
Some of it's through social media, but not all of it. Like it's just the people you know
right.
and talk to and work with and see at the grocery store.
And what the algorithm wants to show you.
Well, yes. There's a lot of issues about that. But my point is, it used to be that you just had to raise money to be on TV. And once you did your commercial, if you could run your commercial more than the other person, and if you could respond to the negative attacks quickly, that was a political campaign. And we're in a whole other different world.
A whole new ball game.
And so hopefully there's, that is both a threat and a possibility. And the creative possibility is that people recognize their own power to be their own influencers and to use trusted sources of information. I think one thing that really scares me a lot is hearing about all the misinformation, especially young people on college campuses and young people. There's a lot of 18 to 24-year-old voters who aren't on college campuses. So how do we reach them?
That's right.
And I think there was so much misinformation and intentional misinformation. I heard today an account of influencers who otherwise would be thought of as liberal being paid money to message Republican messaging to their young audiences, right? So I think a lot of that goes on, and I almost feel like Democrats aren't nearly as good at the dirty tricks.
No. Well, I think too. I think all the time the Democratic Party wants to always perceive itself above board, but when you're doing that, you're never looking down what's below the board, right? Like what actually is actually moving the board along the current, because that board is going to move regardless, right? And I think sometimes, when we're trying to not listen to the people, or we think it's kind of like the old guard, like we were saying with we had State Senator Wilson Bradley on last week, the idea of like it's my turn. So folks with kind of older ideas still trying to maintain the reins of power, but in reality, the folks that you hopefully want to turn out and turn on, those folks will become lifelong voters. They'll become lifelong strategy people, lifelong folks that will help organize the next campaign. But if we're not actively engaging with them and understanding them and even hearing what they're saying, because I think I 100% agree with you. Being on a college campus yesterday, and I try not to get super political with people, but my frat brothers know that I'm a political guy. So I'm talking to these younger people, just kind of in passing, and they're like, oh, my vote don't matter and blah blah blah. I'm like, well, the fact that you're on a college campus is a political decision, right? There was a time where you as a black person or you as a woman could not go to the school. Or at the time, in my alma mater at the time wasn't all girls school.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s. So the fact that things change, these are political decisions. The fact that there's a labeling of white or black, these are things are political decisions, right? Someone had to get together and conspire and put pen to paper to do these things. So if we can change those things on a systemic level, hopefully the Democratic Party can chip into that. But I fear is this idea of the old guard coming in and saying, nope, just go back to, as you said earlier, like the old TV ads and, at 6, 9, and 11, and that's all we need. And it's like, we're in a different ball game. And somebody said earlier about what you were looking for in a perfect world scenario. It was so remarkable. It aligned with what Latasha Brown from What Black Voters Matters always says about how to actively turn out the black vote. And she said it's money, it's movement structure, and it's a message. Those are the three things that you said too. I don't know if you're in contact with her organization, Black Voters Matter, but that was like the exact thing. For us to turn it on, I'm thinking about Carter G. Woodson when he was talking, trying to get folks to invest in some of his platforms, and he's like, look, I can go get the money from the white boys. I don't want to go get a nickel from them. I want your money. I want us to be able to invest in this. I want us to be proud of this, right? When trying to create, Negro History Week at the time before it became Black History Month. So like these are things that I think if we could almost teach the younger generation that this is not new. Nothing is new under the sun. And we've beat back all these things before. But I think a lot of times folks feel like they're kind of listless and they're floating out there on alone. And then they feel like when someone who does speak confidently or some right-wing person, that even though they may be a right-wing person in blue clothing, they feel like that person has a better solution for them.
Mm.
And that's what worries me about these upcoming elections, because these folks, to your point, they're on social media, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, and they're just hearing it from anybody that kind of has a cute face, a fast talking voice within 45 seconds.
Mhm.
And politics and our lives are way more complex than that. They're way more nuanced than that. And people deserve better than that. So when I talked to those young people yesterday, to make a long story long, it's what I tell them is what do you want? What do you demand? Because
Mhm.
that's what politics is about. It is a game of demands. This is not about, do you like this person? Barack Obama is not my daddy. Joe Biden is not my grandfather. My demand is that us as Black people have the state off of our neck. And that takes political understanding. It takes organization. It takes us raising our voice. But if we're saying, I'm not getting invested or I'm not getting involved, then you don't really have a dog in the fight. You have no demands, as Frederick Douglass said. Power concedes nothing without demand. So just those 2 points I thought were just very interesting that you brought up, completely aligned with Latasha Brown, and that yes, I agree that these younger people, we have a lot of work to do there. And I think as a party, the brand as well. I've got to be honest, the Democratic Party brand isn't the best. I think the Republican Party brand doesn't mean that it's good. I'm not saying that's good. I think there's a certain level of baked in followers they have. But as we're trying to get more tactical moving forward, we have to honestly see where these people are coming from and say how our ideas and how our leadership can actively benefit their lives. Because that's the point of a multicultural democracy: is what does it offer people, right? If you're just saying this kind of obtuse word like democracy, that's amorphous. It can mean anything. But the point of addressing a multicultural, pluralistic, multiracial democracy is to give as much resources, or to have as much resources for as many people as possible. And if we're not saying that, then we're just kind of just going with the flow, as you said earlier. So like, um, I just hope in this next phase, and then I'm going to do my work from behind this mic. I know you can do your work from behind the bench, but like, what do you think is something, or what ruling or cases do you think would be important for people to know to get them excited about a judicial candidate? Like, well, this is what's on the docket, and this is what's coming up for you as a young person, or for you as someone who may be marginalized or never voted. There's older people who have never voted. What's something that we could maybe tell them that can get them excited, in your opinion?
Well, it's clear to me that our court makes decisions all the time that affect everyone in North Carolina, everyone's lives, whether or not you ever have a case in front of our court. So that means we decide things like how much decisions that impact how much you pay for electricity, decisions about whether or not if you get injured on the job, are you going to be fairly compensated? If
Okay.
you go to an emergency room and you're uninsured,
Mm.
and all these extra charges that you never anticipated get placed against you, do you have any right to seek recourse for that? Our court has made all sorts of decisions that impact those things, and it's not easy. Like, people don't. I understand that people aren't. I mean, even though all of our oral arguments are on YouTube.
Yep.
And all of our court opinions are easy. You can find them on the internet. So even though there's, like, in some sense, greater access, I certainly understand that people aren't paying too much attention. When you said what are some important decisions, I'm like, well, where do I start? Like, do you want to know
Right,
about
right,
voting
right, right,
rights? Do you
right.
want to
Yeah.
know about education? Do you want to know about women's rights? Do you want to know about criminal justice system? Do you want to know about racial equity?
Gotcha.
Because I can talk about all those things.
I gotcha.
So let me talk about racial equity for a minute,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this is something truly extraordinary. So our court changed hands from a democratically controlled court in 2022. There was an election. All of the Democrats lost. The court flipped. It was 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans. At beginning January 2023, it was 5 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And to people who think that their votes don't count, I have like 2 big responses. Number one,
Okay, lay it on
the
us.
first African-American woman to serve as Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, Sherry Beasley, she lost by 401 votes.
That's right.
So I'm guessing that you have enough people listening to this podcast that would be more than 401 votes in North Carolina. So our races can be incredibly close. But the other thing to consider is why is the other side working so hard to make sure your vote doesn't count if it didn't matter, right? And so you mentioned the Wisconsin races, and both of those were ones where the partisan balance of the court was at issue. And note, that's a state that actually nominally has nonpartisan elections, but it's totally politicized, and everyone knows who the Democrat is and the Republican. So
I mean, like he's literally sending out flyers with him and Trump on the flyer. Like, it's like, okay, come on.
Yeah. So why in North Carolina? I think people should ask the question: when the court right now is 5 Republican, 2 Democrats, why is the Republican candidate Jefferson Griffin spending literally millions of dollars fighting over whether to throw out 67,000 ballots? And because that case, in theory, might come before our court, I'm not going to comment on the case, but I can give you some facts. And one of those facts is that of those 67,000 votes, they are disproportionately young voters, women, and people of color, right? So why is that? And the other answer to why they are trying to, why this seat matters so much to the Republican Party, is because there is a path for them to essentially indefinitely control the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And the way that they can do that is a 3-step process, and they've already achieved step 1. So the first step they did was to pass a law that said that if there's a vacancy on the court, the governor, under the state constitution, the governor appoints. The General Assembly passed a law saying, but he can only appoint one of 3 people nominated by the party that the justice who left the bench belonged to, right? So if a Republican member of the court leaves, whether they're appointed to the 4th Circuit, whether they just decide to retire, if the seat is vacant because a Republican justice has left, today, as it stands, Governor Stein would have to appoint one of 3 Republicans nominated by the party. Second step is to get a 7-0 court. So defeat Justice Riggs, defeat me in 26. They have a 7-0 Republican court. Step 3, at this point where people are really angry about the politicization of our court system, they say, oh, okay, we have a solution. We'll have retention elections. This is a method used.
Explain that, yeah.
Yeah, retention elections are where nobody can challenge the sitting justice. The voters just decide whether to keep them or not. So retain them or not. So you vote up and down. There's a name on your ballot. You vote keep or not. And in the states that have that method, the sitting justices almost always win. Like, they don't raise money, they don't campaign, they just put their name out there. Everybody checks the box because that's the name, and they win. So in that regime, and that was passed once before in 2016, and a court ruled that it was unconstitutional under the state constitution because the state constitution doesn't say anything about retention elections. But with a Republican-controlled court, it would become constitutional, and Republicans would control our judicial system indefinitely, which would also mean that they would allow partisan gerrymandering indefinitely. So gerrymandering being the other problem, the other democracy deficit, arguably, that exists in North Carolina. In 2022, the democratically controlled Supreme Court said that extreme gerrymandering, no matter who does it, Democrats do it, if Republicans do it, doesn't matter. If the districts are unfair, if they don't fairly reflect the voting strength and voting patterns of the voters in the state, it violates the state constitution. That's what we ruled. We required redrawing. Our congressional delegation then became 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, which pretty fairly reflects a purple state that is fairly evenly divided, right?
Yep.
2023, new court took that case back again, which has never happened in the 200-year history of our court. But they said, no, we're gonna change that. We think it's fine. There's nothing we can do about it. It's fine if that's what the legislature wants to do. That's fine. That's constitutional. So the legislature then redrew, and we now have a congressional delegation that is 10 Republican, 4 Democrats. We also have, consider this, in our state legislature, for both the state House seats and the state Senate seats, more voters across the state voted for Democrats. So if you just count up all the votes in every single district, Democrat, Republican, more people voted for Democrats. But yet we have a legislature where the Senate has a veto-proof majority.
That's right.
And the House lacks it by 1 vote. And so, you just got to ask, how does that meet anyone's idea of fairness? So,
it doesn't.
So when you have that kind of effort to distort our democracy, hopefully people recognize that their votes are crucial, and that this 2026 election matters tremendously, and it impacts their lives in ways that they, and I believe the essence of a democracy is that people have a voice in choosing who makes the rules that govern their lives. And our court makes a lot of rules that govern people's lives. So everyone's vote and voice absolutely matters and needs to be heard.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the gerrymandering that took place in North Carolina, it's very likely that the United States House of Representatives would be at the very least tied right now. I think there was at least 2 seats that would likely have gone Democrat if the maps were the same. And then from a state perspective, it would look more reflective of the actual votes. I saw something today where, Democrats have more votes, but they're not represented properly in the state. So, the thought of a 7-0 Supreme Court is, it feels like game over. And I think if we're going into a new era where the state governments are going to matter far more than federal, and for people who live here, it is going to matter tremendously, and probably more than ever, right? So I think it is important that the other thing is, it's 2025. How many days do you say to the election? Around 2026,
582 days.
Yeah, that seems like a long time, but it's really not. And I think everyone should know your name. I know you've been in this seat for some time, but there's still a lot of people that they just don't really pay attention to a lot of the, especially the courts. Who's running for that? Your name needs to be up there with everybody who's running for the U.S. Senate, House of Representatives. Like, I mean, it needs to be a household name, and hopefully that we can get the word out. People get to know you, and then you go back to the young voters. A lot of things people forget about. There's 16-year-olds that are going to be voting in 2 years, and so these people, these young voters, they've. I mean, I didn't even myself. Like, I didn't even realize how the federal courts worked, or courts in general, uh, for like half my adult life,
That's fair.
right? And
That's fair.
so, and I'm somebody who's always been active since I turned 18 into politics, right? So, how do we get the people to kind of awaken and be aware of what's going on? And I think now is a prime opportunity because of everything that's going on. We see people going out protesting, going to town halls, becoming more engaged. And yes, these are more politically active people, but they still are like, okay, what do we do? Well, why did Democrats say, hey, go help out your precinct and join the precinct, right? Or but there's this energy that I think that can be captured by yourself and other people. Like, how do we get these people involved and get them talking about us and get them talking in their communities, or wherever it may be. I think prime opportunity, and like you said, 2018, that was another uh, midterm election for President Trump. We're heading into that again. He's unpopular. So, but we can't just, hope. We got to get started now, right? And I know you're getting started. I know you're raising money, but we need to start amplifying your message and get the people going. Because this election to me is probably going to be one of the most important. This race, I'm sorry, is going to be
Right.
one of the most important races in the country. Hands down. North Carolina is a battleground state. To me, it's like the frontline state. They're trying to create a blueprint with Jefferson Griffin, the Republicans, and how to steal elections. And winning 51-49 isn't going to cut it. Like, we need to be getting people out, getting people engaged, aiming for 60-40, right? So then, because all that disenfranchisement and the things they're trying to do now, we have to overcome that, and that's the reality. Like, we can't play games with these 400, 700, 200 votes in a 100,000 votes election is crazy. Like, it's so razor thin, but we can't do that. So we have to do more than just kind of play a monkey in the middle.
But I started to talk about racial justice, so let me just finish the point there.
Yeah.
In the 2022, our court said, based on trial court rulings, that the voter ID requirement was intentionally racially discriminatory and against the state constitution, and that the way that we re-enfranchised people with felony convictions who served their sentences, we said that law was intentionally racially discriminatory. And the new court reheard those cases, especially the voter ID, took it up again and said, we're no longer going to apply the standard that the U.S. Constitution, that's applied under the U.S. Constitution for how you prove racial discrimination. We have a higher standard under our state constitution. So you think that the federal constitutional right should be basic, and you can't make it harder than that. But actually,
Right.
that's what our Supreme Court has said. So under the state constitution, it is actually now harder to prove racial discrimination than under the U.S. Constitution.
Wow.
So that is the kind of thing. So that can impact everything from housing, education, employment. If you're stopped by the police and believe your rights were violated because of your race, the whole driving while black problem. Just so many ways in which our court is, and I'm just repeating what I've said in dissenting opinions.
Yeah.
A week ago, I issued a dissenting opinion in which I make the argument that our court has essentially overruled the principle that you cannot be excluded from a jury based on your race or gender. So jury service is actually one of the key components of civic engagement.
Yes, it is.
And North Carolina courts have a dismal record of never finding any violation of that principle. So that's why I say that you give me an issue and I'll tell you how our court has ruled, and then you can decide whether you like this current court or whether you think we need different people on our court.
And it's almost like they're going back to the idea of states' rights. Like it's states' rights, but as it relates to the power structure, right? It's not states' rights for women who want to have rights to their bodies. It's states' rights of who gets to be dominated and which group. And of course, it's this like this tongue-in-cheek language that we have to have, and I think to a degree we should probably jettison that as in the Democratic Party, or folks who are progressive, or at least trying to survive in this upcoming era that we're walking into. That white supremacy has always been a big foundation of this nation, right? The genocide of the indigenous people, chattel slavery for 246 years, the ending of Reconstruction with the Redemption era, and then you have legalized apartheid for 100 years. So like we've been under more oppression for longer as Black people than we've had freedom, even under quotes. And my biggest fear is that these things may seem appealing to certain groups of people. Let's take, for example, this most recent election. I hear it all the time when we're talking about, who brought us Donald Trump and all these elections and all these outcomes. And I'm like, 8 out of 10 Trump voters were white people. But then I'm always told by someone like, well, Black men, they're skating towards Donald Trump and blah blah. And I said I kind of sat with that over the weekend as I was talking to some of my frat brothers during our reunion. And I'm like, why would this happen? Because there's one guy I know, he's kind of like, oh, I mean, I don't know, Trump was saying this, and Kamala was saying that, blah, blah. And at that moment, it kind of hit me. I said, for a Black man who is maybe not as politically astute as Ram and myself, I'll say that I can see the appeal of a Trump. I can see the appeal of the GOP to a slight degree. What do I mean by that? What did they say? They're saying that they want to hire you not based off DEI. They want to hire you based off of meritocracy. They want to hire you based off of people who are qualified. Now, that's the thing is, Black people have been saying that since we got free from our shackles, right? So there's a level like, yeah, I've been saying that off of my resume, off of my merit, off of my grit, off of my determination, off of my abilities. Hire me based off that. Now, that's not what they're saying. There's a certain group of people that are saying that too, but I do see how that is alluring. And if we don't have a counteract to that because we don't want to name that, we don't want to identify that, then we are just seeding the ground and letting that kind of, propagate itself over time. But also, as we look at the voting trends, Barack Obama knocked it out the window, not out the window with 92% Black male vote. Hillary Clinton got 82%. Joe Biden got 80%, and then it was going to be 77%. And Kamala Harris got 72%. So even then, it's kind of like this sliding scale of like, was Joe Biden just this, anomaly, right? But then we go into just what is the language being told to these people? It's being told that like we want you to, only have it be your resume, have it only be your skill set. And if we're not saying anything, as you just laid out so eloquently, Justice Earls, about like what racial justice means to the law or what it does not mean to the law, it can be interpreted as any way. And I think that's the fear of these brothers, as well as I was talking to them yesterday, of like these words, they've always just been rules. I mean, any law is only as good as those that enforce them, right? So if it's not enforced by people that believe that you're even a human being, it doesn't matter what these black letters on a white piece of paper mean. So that is my fear, is that some folks will get lulled into this false sense of hopelessness, or this false sense of security, I should say, with this kind of like this right wing, this this faux masculinity, this idea of bootstraps. And when we need folks to understand that the democracy is a broader and more robust than just your personal picadillos and whatever political decision you're trying to make. So that's my biggest fear. But I also can kind of understand how that happens. Now on the other side, we have to have a response to that. And I think some of these cases you're talking about as it relates to the education or bills or police misconduct. These are things that I think cuts across that, because real quick you'll be reminded of your class and your status to the law with your daily life, right? So don't let that flowery language get you knocked off base, right? So that's what scares me, that folks kind of allow that, stuff to sit in, because when you're in pain, you're always looking for someone to blame. And our people have been in pain for a very long time. And it's very easy to say, like, well, it has to be because there's a trans person, or it has to be because some uppity woman got that job, or it has to be because, you weren't pulling your pants up. And it's like, no, these are systems that are put into place. And we have to, we Black people have always, we've always carried the flag, carried the Bible, fought in the wars, demanded our respect, demanded our humanity. And when that history does not get taught, it only allows for that to be repeated again. And that is why when I'm talking to brothers like that yesterday, it causes concern. But that's why I feel like my purpose on this planet is to step in the breach. Because if we're not doing that, then I'm gonna let someone else tell you who you are. And they'll say, hey, don't vote. Don't vote for, Justice Earls. Vote for whichever right-wing person we're going to pull out of obscurity, who has, 2 years of experience, this run for the Supreme Court that we think is amazing. And he has 2 machine guns on top of a pickup truck. And he's like, MAGA, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I do believe we're living in idiocracy. So I'm kind of like, okay, kind of prepping myself for that. Like, we may be getting there. But I really don't have a question here. That's kind of a long wind up. But what do you think about what I just said, Dr. Earls, Justice Earls? What do you think about that? I would say call you Dr. Earls and Professor Earls.
Well, as you were talking, I thought about how in the rest of the world, when any entity is trying to address discrimination and racial discrimination, they look at numbers, and they allow you to seek redress if there's a disparate racial impact. So just on the question of hiring, if an entity wants to say, we hire the most qualified people, but then you look at their workforce and it's all white, that leads me to the natural conclusion that being white is one of the qualifications.
That's right.
Because, especially, and obviously you have to look at the workforce, but in a state like North Carolina that's 22% Black, so in another regime, under human rights declarations, under other countries' ways of ending racial discrimination, they would say that's a racially disparate impact. If you're in a jurisdiction with a workforce that's 22% Black and your workforce is all white, there's a disparate racial impact there, and so there's a remedy that needs to be put in place. So yes, I'm all for ending discrimination, but diversity, equity, and inclusion was never about discrimination. Right. So I think that the right has a very good skill set of distorting and making something, setting up a straw man, making something what it isn't, and then knocking it down. But it's very insidious, I think, because
no question. Yes.
I saw I was in Charlotte weekend before last to see a screening of a movie about Ruby Bridges, who was the young girl who integrated public schools in Louisiana, in New Orleans. And it's a beautiful movie. And it's interesting because what comes through in that portrayal is that what her parents wanted was quality education. They wanted her to have the same resources, access to the same opportunities to learn. And so, and that's what parents want now, right? And I could talk a lot about education, the whole notion of putting education back in the states, in a state like North Carolina, where we are actively defunding public education, really problematic. But I was shocked to find out that in Florida, one school system said that film couldn't be shown to second graders because a parent complained that a child seeing that movie might think that white people don't like Black people.
Wow.
So they're not allowed to show it in that public school system to second graders.
My 5-year-old watched it 2 weeks ago. So she plays with her white friends. She does not think that. She's 5. So
right. The free speech absolutist people, the folks who are all about free speech. It is very appalling and shocking to me because, and I try to remind people, they're not erasing Black history. They're erasing white history. We didn't create chattel slavery. We didn't create Jim Crow. We didn't create black codes. We didn't create, all of these things that were forced upon us. And there is a real shame in that. And I'm always like, but you could always, align yourself with like folks like Viola Louisa, who was, she saw what happened down in Birmingham, Alabama, and she left her children to go down there and fight for Black civil rights. You could be like Schwerner and Goodman, who left their homes up in New York to come down to Mississippi to help Black people register to vote. I mean, there's you could be like John Brown. There's countless examples of people. But why do you think that your children would side with the Bull Connors or the George Wallaces or the Ronald Reagans of the world? Like, I don't understand that component, but I do understand that component because as I said earlier, if you don't teach those histories, you're doomed to repeat those histories. But I know we're a little bit over time here. I do have a one last question for you, Justice Earls, and I'm so glad that you could give us some of your time. But with this upcoming election and all the things at stake, what is your biggest takeaway that did you think that someone out there who's listening for the first time, just hearing your voice, just hearing your amazing story, just hearing you eloquently lay all this stuff out, what is one thing you want them to walk away from this conversation understanding about you and your potential for the future vision of the North Carolina Supreme Court?
Well, I do know, as you said earlier, that there will be a lot of ugly attack ads about me.
Yeah.
And I think what I want people to know is that it's really important to verify your sources and find sources of information that you trust. My passion for the law comes from my personal experience, and my commitment is to equal justice under the law.
That's right.
And there's so many ways in which we need to do a much better job. So I believe that the justice system is about more than locking people up. And the other side, that's what you're going to hear. Judges who lock them up are good. Judges who might actually think people have rights are bad. And our justice system is supposed to do a lot more than public safety is important. And in fact, Black community is more often the victims of crimes, right? But it is our role to enforce the rights that the state constitution provides, including the right to a sound basic education. And that's my commitment. And I'm happy to talk to any groups. Come check out my website, send me an email, ask me questions. But I want people to recognize their own power.
There you go.
And not to give up their power by getting diverted or discouraged. Our vision for the courts is one that we can flip them back by 2028 and have a court in place in time for the next round of redistricting. So it's a long-term strategy, but it's a strategy designed to return democracy to the people of the state, and that means all the people, and that we can only do that if everyone's voice is heard. So I want to hear from people about what they care about, what matters to them, and they should hold me accountable. They should hold me accountable to whether or not I'm responsive to their concerns.
I love it. I love it. It reminds me of that Alice Walker quote that the easiest way to get people to give up their power is to make them think they never had it to begin with.
Right.
And you're 100% correct. So all right, what is your website? You said your website. What is your website?
Yes, it's earlsforjustice.com, and you can use the number 4 or the word 4, but Earls for Justice.
Oh, you got them both. Okay, I see. See, look, there's that judicial brain there. She's like, I'm thinking outside the box. I love it. Justice Earls, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we hope you come back on, and we will be supporting you, and whatever we can do with this platform is yours at any time, my friend. And we wish you all the best.
Well, thank you for what you're doing to get the word out and to get information to people. It's really fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Justice Earls. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was Justice Anita Earls. Whew, bringing the heat. I love it when folks are smarter than me. I love it. I mean, it is just like, tell me more. Continue on. Folks got to know this stuff, right? So, like, I'm so glad that she was able to like bring it down to the ground level. What's happening, in those hollowed halls that a lot of us really either you don't have access to, and if you do have access to them, it's probably not a good time for you, or the folks that just don't have the time, as you said, the 4-minute political person out there who only has 4 minutes of their day to dedicate to politics. But yeah, what did you think?
Oh, I mean, that was great. if you told me 6 months ago that I'd be talking to the North Carolina Supreme Court Justice, I'd be I don't know. I did not even I don't know. I didn't think that even when I came to you and said let's start this podcast, I didn't really
Hey, brother.
imagine but hey, it goes to kind of show that like these politicians are regular people, right?
That's right.
And these are people that aren't outside of your realm, outside of your reach. I got to North Carolina, and I'm again. I was Chicago. I was in Illinois. I wasn't talking to politicians. I knew some people who are politically involved, but
Right, right.
it wasn't like, and it wasn't my intention to be meeting the governor and Senator Bradley and all these people, but it just happened. I'm like out there canvassing, something I'm passionate about. I like to think in some ways, I don't say have sway, but I have their ear at least, right? I can talk to some of these people and see what they're doing and hold them, like Justice Earl said, hold them accountable,
I love that. I love that
right?
part.
And so it's anyone can do it. I'm a normal person. I'm like literally, you know what I'm saying? So and to be able to have these conversations, I think is incredible. And I think people can do the same. People can do, you don't need to have a podcast, right? Go to these town halls, actually talk and engage. Like there's certain things you could do. Go to the canvassing, go to these events and just chat with them and understand. And people trying to figure out what to do. Again, this energy has to be captured, right? You don't have to go out to protest, and you don't have to go out to do a podcast. But and for the people who are out there protesting, well, like let's do something else too with that energy, right? So hey, if you're somebody in the Union County said, hey, if we can get a DJ to come to an event, that'd be great. If we can get a marketing
Yep.
person, like, so you got to use your talents and use them in ways and be creative to help causes, not just Democrats, but whatever's important to you. It's going to be increasingly important. Everything is not just money and donations.
Right.
It's going to be about putting in work. It's a community at this point, and it's not just coming down to like parties and elections. So uh yeah, hopefully people hear me or pass the word. And like I said, it was very enlightening to hear her talk, and just kind of and highlight things that I hadn't even heard, about the retainment, I think she called it, for the
Retainment
justices.
election. Yeah, that was new to me. Yeah.
And I guess I've seen that, and not necessarily on the Supreme Court level, but definitely in
Right,
Cook
right.
County in Chicago, they had that type of system for some of the county judges.
Mm.
Um, as she mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, but
That's why I was like, yeah, explain that. I mean, expand on that because I felt like it felt familiar,
hmm
but you're right. Like you don't know what shape it takes.
hmm and then yeah, I mean they're all full out assault on the North Carolina Supreme Court, and I think a lot hangs in the balance. So it's going to be important. Riggs, that's still going.
I
Got to
mean,
pull that off.
when the vote was happening, we was wearing coats, and now it's like we wearing shorts. I mean, there's a problem here, right? Like we're getting to the next election now. Like what? Come on,
Yeah, and
you know?
she's still
And
in her seat, like right. So,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, if you're listening, if you're on the Instagram live, please go to YouTube. They cut us off after an hour on Instagram because with how we stream. But go to the YouTube, like, subscribe, follow, share, all that good stuff. We're getting bigger and bigger, and I think we hit the 500 subscriber mark on YouTube today.
Whoop,
Um,
whoop.
so yeah, just continue to see where it goes. Thank you for the support for people who continue to watch us. But yeah, we got a few other things coming up.
Yeah, yeah, man. So,
So I was out Thursday. Uh,
yeah,
I had daddy duty, and
it's all right.
it's
A good
this
black father. He's a good black father.
this has to have to put in a little bit of work to put this together, and I didn't want that
Yeah,
extra stress putting two little girls
yeah.
to bed and rushing over. And but this news week, wow, oh wow.
Hell of a week to miss. Folks, I mean, dare I say the largest kerfuffle in the current, and I love how Justice Earls kept using the word regime. 'Cause I'm like, that's exactly what the hell this is, a regime. The newest kerfuffle during the Trump regime is, in the, dare I say, the largest kerfuffle of the Trump regime is whiskey leaks. We gotta we gotta talk about whiskey leaks, man. So last week, was it last? I guess this happened weeks ago, but it was released. Was it
So
Tuesday?
so yeah, so
What
they
is
attacked. There was an attack in Yemen. United States
on
attacked
March 15th?
attacked some targets. This week, I don't even know what day it was. I mean, these weeks seem for like
Yes. So the
forever.
attacks actually happened on March 15th. So all this real time stuff was happening two weeks ago. But this information got leaked, whiskey leaked, this past week, and it was on a Signal chat, which a lot of us have Signal. I have Signal, but again, I am not of any sort of elected office. I don't hold sway over millions of people's lives like Mike Walls, Tulsi Gabbard, and DUI hire Pete Hegseth. But there was a Signal chat with 18 Republicans on it, and their staffers, right? So these are the people who are organizing for them. So it's not just, Pete Hegseth by himself. It was his chief of staff on the call, I believe, or something like that. But it was their staff on the call as well. And dude, they're talking straight up like attack plans. This is stuff that is classified, sensitive information. They're like, well, then you have, and anyway. So, but as we're talking about this stuff, which should not be discussed on a Signal chat, um, circumscriptly, they added, Mike Waltz added, Atlantic chief editor, Jeffrey Goldberg. And Jeffrey Goldberg and I probably have different politics. He's definitely tried to make he's definitely manufactured consent for all of our dirty wars over the past. He served in the IDF over summer camp, over summertime. Most kids go work at the movie theaters or go work at the ice cream stand, but he went and served as a prison guard over Palestinians when he was in college. So this is his background. He's a neocon. But that doesn't mean what he reported was any less truthful. And what had happened was they looped him into this group chat, and he just saw, how they're talking. Now, there's a lot of takeaways from this, right? And when he first got into the chat, he said that he, like most of us, would think this was a joke. Like, okay, someone's fucking with me. This isn't true. This isn't real. And he checked with his legal team at the Atlantic. He checked with he reached out to the White House for comment. He reached out to folks who've done this in the past, and they're like, you should report this. The White House did not give comment, and then he dropped the bomb that this, I mean, no pun intended. He dropped the bomb that this is what they're talking about. And if you could pull up the actual text messages, and I'll give you some time to do that, because he took screenshots. He took screenshots of what they was talking about. And you have Mike Walls, responding with these emojis like the fist, flag, fire emoji. And as I said earlier about the takeaways, it was one that they were just the disdain they have for Europe was quite grotesque. Europe is supposedly our biggest ally in the West, of our other settler colonial allies out there. But even on its face, as what we're supposed to be aligned with, is that these people, they really hate, they really despise Europe, because Pete Hegseth said, "Oh, we have to do this basically because we're tired of bailing out Europe." Which one is this? This is
Yeah,
JD
the
Vance
bailing
here.
out Europe. This is what he says, bailing out Europe. Let's just make sure our messaging is tight here, and then they talk about, people don't know who Houthi is, and so they're talking about creating the message and
Here he is.
how
This
to
one
make it.
here. You read that. It's too small for
It's
me. Go ahead.
Pete Hegseth, VP. I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but Mike is correct.
All caps.
We're the only ones on the planet who can do this. Nobody else even comes close. Question is timing. I feel like the timing is good as any, given the POTUS directive to reopen shipping lanes. So you're trying to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. and SM, I don't know who SM is, but they're, they start
Most folks,
talking.
most folks believe that's Stephen Miller.
Okay,
So
so that
in
part's
most of these situations, there's always like the voice of God, or like the left hand of the God, or if you watch Game of Thrones, the hand of the king, right? The person who's right next to the king. So Stephen Miller says, I think as I heard it, the president was clear, green light, but we soon made clear to Egypt and Europe that what we expect in return. So what's also interesting is that this what happened to this whole Trump was the president of no more wars. What happened with that?
yeah,
And do you know who's not on this signal chat?
Trump.
Trump. So who is running the damn country? Who
Well,
has the clearance to drop bombs? Because most if you're
well,
having an active war, you have to go through
the
Congress.
confirmation came from Stephen Miller, and it said,
So
and
is
he
it
had plausible deniability. Look, as I heard it, the president was clear. As I
right as I
heard it,
heard it? Right.
green light. And that was it. So then what? Hegseth called up the general and said he probably called him on an unsecured line and said, "Go for it." Like, how did this really, like, the way that this played out is really astonishing to me. And they're talking about the Signal app a month before, and so I'm in
A week,
as
a week, or so a month now.
so,
Yeah.
but before that, I'm in the cybersecurity space. We track
Hmm.
vulnerabilities of applications, all kinds of things. The NSA a month ago said there was a vulnerability within Signal, and they should not, basically, should no one
On
should
any
use it,
government
like, or
phones.
not like no one necessarily, but there's a
You should have on
vulnerability.
government phones. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but they were still sending it out. And this is an application that's not approved. So just like with any
Right. Right.
business, if you're doing things well, you should only be using approved applications within your businesses, because you don't want information to leak. You don't want data to leak. You don't just go off and do a rogue application with any
Right.
business. Like, best
I
practice,
mean,
don't do
there's
it.
certain hospitals they don't send patient information with
Patient
Signal
healthcare
because
information,
of HIPAA, right? Like
HIPAA,
it doesn't matter,
privacy,
right? Right. Right.
privacy. In this case, national security, actual the livelihood of your soldiers that you're putting in harm's way, spies. I mean, this is crazy to me that they're putting it out there. But here's why they're doing it. One reason is because they don't want this information to be logged, right?
Seen.
No, well,
Right.
logged
Which is
because
also illegal.
they have to, yes, Presidential
The
Records Act,
Federal Records
Federal
Act. Yeah.
Records Act, both of them.
Yeah.
So like these things are supposed to be like actually recorded and kept,
Yeah.
kept secret, but they're not. And so they're finding a way around it. They execute it poorly, and they will continue to do so. I mean, we knew this was going to happen going
Oh yeah.
into this
Regime.
regime. Yeah, I'm not calling them I'm done calling them
I love that.
administration,
Yeah.
but like
It's a regime. Yeah.
you know, but we caught, like we said, you when you hire like Hegseth and Cash Patel, and Cash Patel's up there looking like Boo Boo the Fool, then
Uh
yeah,
huh.
like what do you expect? Like, they don't even know what to do, and then like they literally don't know how to investigate. I mean, at least put on a charade. They don't even. I mean, these are
They can't
amateurs
even do
all
that.
around, like all around, right? So like they don't even
Right.
want to investigate themselves. They don't want to. So to me, it's like, it's well, it was a blunder that was bound to happen, and it's going to get worse again. Somebody's gonna die. People might be dying. We don't even know truly what's happening. People whose names are getting exposed, spy names getting exposed. People have gone to jail for this, right? Even there was a
For
case.
less. For
There was a
less.
case. I forget who he was, some government agent, and he accidentally exposed information. And the judge said that, and they confirmed, like, if you accidentally do it, you're still
It counts.
committing treason. Like, so yeah, it counts. And this administration wants to act like it's not happening, but to their detriment. I don't think it's going to go over well. Well, it's not going over well, even with a majority
No.
of Republicans, a
That's right.
slight majority of Republicans,
Hmm.
and soldiers, military, losing confidence. Like, if you see your commander in chief, in the person who runs the Department of Justice, fumbling around, the DUI hire, and not keeping their people safe. I mean, this is a huge mistake. But it
Right.
was also one, I think, on purpose, to be honest. But the next time might not be so forgiving.
I think another thing that shocked me is that like we didn't really get a reason why they were doing this. You know, if anything, it felt like Pete Hegseth trying to show off like I'm more than just a TV host to these other actual because Mike Walls is actually higher in rank when they were both in the military than Pete Hegseth, right? So he's trying to show off like all the attack plans. And if you pull the text of the actual attack plans, because now we all can see it, so there's no more spin, there is no more, but there's no like real reason behind it. I think even when they say like I'm tired of bailing out Europe, if anybody, this is to benefit the Israelis. Because if we go back to why the Houthis were even stopping the shipping lanes non-violently, like no one was dying, but nobody. Yes, they were shooting missiles at ships, but they were enough to not harm humans. It was in retaliation. They were doing their actual their state duty as a country to try to end the genocide in Palestine as what all of us are supposed to be doing. So that's why the Houthis were stopping shipping lanes to stop Israel from getting their whatever resources they needed to Israel. So when he says that I'm trying to bail out Europe, that's factually incorrect. And the way how do I know this? How do you know this? Because when there was the ceasefire, the shipping lanes opened back up again. So it was only when Israel broke the ceasefire agreement the shipping lanes got back closed up again in the Trump administration.
And that's another point. And things that gets lost in this news story is that like they were starving people. They were trying to prevent aid from getting to Gaza, right? So, yeah, and so Mike Waltz,
Yeah, so then we get to this point where there has to be a show of force. And the thing about the right wing, since they don't have any intellectual power, they don't have any actual compassionate power, they don't have any true masculine power. It's all faux masculinity. It all has to be through extreme acts of violence. And one of the text messages was we had a positive ID on one of the guys, one of the missile guys, and he was walking into the into his girlfriend's apartment complex. But it's all good because that apartment complex has been leveled. That's a war crime. And if I'm not mistaken, our vice president Jefferson Davis Vance, who was the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, but Jefferson Davis Vance, but that's not his name, but Jefferson Davis Vance, that's what I call him. I think he said excellent. These are the people that we're dealing with, right? This person, they leveled an apartment building that had women and children and innocent people that didn't have anything to do with the Houthis and leveled it. So we're seeing I go back to this kind of colonial violence, this disgusting articulation of power and strength. That's what this group, it's a ninth grade group chat of like, oh, I slapped her butt. Oh, I punched John in the face. That's what this is.
Yeah, human lives is just it's nothing, right? It's an afterthought, and it's not even something. It's a second thought, right?
It's way down the list. It's way down the list. I mean, we have terms like collateral damage,
collateral damage, and to
get us to accept the extermination of people. That us as regular people,
acceptable
collateral damage.
And then they turned it into a calculation, and then where human didn't have to make that decision, and now now they can do that, run it through, and how many people? Okay, it's worth it. But I imagine for a lot of folks that was not easy decisions, but they made them. But for these folks, I don't think it's not even an afterthought. Like it just do not care. And so, but then they needed to find somebody you would think they would find a fall guy. But they didn't. So
So Jeffrey Goldberg, he's looking at these text messages. And he's sitting there and he's like, okay, what do I do with this stuff? Right? Because I think, I mean, I'm not in the group chat. I don't really screenshot too much. But I think if you screenshot, it tells the folks that you screenshotted it, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. I've been trying. I don't know. I don't know. The whole point of Signal is to be like, but yeah, like.
I mean, like for example, like on Snapchat. I mean, back in the day, if you screenshot on Snapchat, it informs the other person that someone has screenshotted you. And I'm not too sure. I haven't tried that on my Signal group. But like this was the app, and dare I say they were probably using their personal cell phones because Der Spiegel, the German newspaper, found their phone numbers after this story broke.
Yeah, I mean, if they have government phones, any phone that has some sort of cybersecurity around it, you will not allow you to install unapproved applications.
Right.
However, the
Right.
caveat is, my understanding is somebody forced certain agencies to allow signals. So who knows? But yes, that makes a very good point that it was either probably personal. It could have been a mix. There's nothing that protects signal from being put on a personal phone and somebody joining that chat. Case in point,
Right.
Jeffrey Goldberg. Whereas other
Could you imagine that being Jeffrey
security
Goldberg sitting in your crib and you're like, what's going on here?
I mean, yeah, he could have did a few things. He could have just stayed in there and just been like, "Oh, I thought it was a joke." He could, but he probably. I mean, honestly, like, I would be worried about them coming to kill me. I'd be worried about them coming to lock me up. Personally, I don't know, man. I probably would have just stayed in there and took one.
I'd have stayed in that bad boy until 2028.
Yeah. So
JG, and no one was like, "Who's JG? Why would JG ever say something?"
And this is just one chat, and this is just one thing they got caught on. Like, there's who knows what these guys are talking about and exposing, and probably in text messages too.
Right.
So this is just scratching.
So it's been a tough week for the Grand Old Party, and they've been making their rounds on their news outlets. I believe we have a clip here of Mike Walls. Really, he's trying his best here, brother. Let's hear Mike Walls trying to spin this with us.
Instagram has let us go past hours tonight, so here we go.
Even Instagram's like, what y'all talking about?
Sure, everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone?
National Security Advisor Mike Waltz appeared on Fox News in an attempt to explain how he inadvertently included the Atlantic editor.
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets
someone
sucked
sent
in,
you that
it gets
contact.
sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was
So
on
the
the chat?
person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who
guy.
was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Despite saying he takes, quote, full responsibility, Waltz continued.
So, yeah, I mean,
they get sucked up in there, that.
So I just want to point out, like, for Mike Waltz, apparently he's donated to other Trump opponents. So he's always been a supporter of his opponent. If I was a Democrat, I would be planting a seed of doubt of, like, is this guy actually trying to expose?
He's trying to sabotage Trump.
Yeah, because I would, and Trump would take the bait, and but anyways.
In fact, Trump didn't take. Could you find that clip of Trump when they asked him the very next morning? At this point, the story had been out for a few hours, and Trump was at a press gaggle, and Trump, he's doing all these blathering press hits where. And this is one contrast that he did make with Joe Biden, where Joe Biden was not around cameras as frequent to react to things. But Donald Trump gets in front of a camera, and they ask him about this. At this point, he should have at least been briefed. We do know that the presidential daily briefing has folks.
Well, he doesn't. He doesn't like getting briefings, and he doesn't like reading them.
Right. But
they have to use crayon.
I think it's another one where he's standing up.
Okay.
If you find that one. Yeah, he's standing up, and you can tell. Like, we all know, like, Trump lies when he speaks, but there's certain times where he tells the truth, and I think he told the truth inadvertently because he literally did not know what the fuck was going on. So he's sitting here and he's like, "What's it about now? What are you talking about? Signal? I think the signals are broken." Like, he doesn't even know what signal is. And I don't think, and this is not the time where he's like, trying to play around. I literally don't think that he knew what signal was. Yeah, this is it here.
To me, I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what?
What?
Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
Pause it.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on?
Trump clearly doesn't know what the hell is going on here. Like, this dude just rolled out of bed, had his first or maybe third Diet Coke and his second Big Mac of the day, and he's like, "Hold on, what?" And He literally doesn't know because I try to remind folks, Donald Trump ran for the presidency to avoid prison. We cannot forget that. That's the only now that he won, he's coasting, baby. He's on easy street. He just wakes up, farts into a mic, and then goes and plays golf, and that's it.
That's it.
So the fact that he doesn't know this, to go back to our conversation earlier about who was not on that signal chat, Donald Trump, who's running the country.
You know what? You know why he didn't think it was a big deal? Because he does the same shit. He's like, oh, what?
Donald
Like,
Trump,
I text message.
No, look at his face. Again, I think this is a minority time where this dude does not know what he's lying. Not he's telling the truth, but he would be lying if he knew. That's my point.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like
At this point, he has no
signal is
idea.
broken.
He's
Right.
just like,
Of course.
you don't know what signal is.
Later on, of course, he's gonna back him up. That's the other clip you're gonna play.
Mhm.
But at this point, this is the next morning. So we've all got the text messages. We've all read the shit from Jeffrey Goldberg on the Atlantic. This is the next morning. So continue on.
For the hood, yes. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
So you heard the president's words there, and he
So-
certainly looks like he is hearing about this for the first time.
Again, Donald Trump has a certain way of lying, and of course we've heard his whole "I don't know anything about, I don't know her, I don't know him." At a certain point, Pete Hegseth will just be a coffee boy, but that's his usual shtick. But this time, I think when that reporter asked that question, he had not heard about it.
Yeah. I don't think so. You could tell by his reaction. I don't think so. Or he I don't think he plays the stupid that well, but I don't know.
No,
He's just
he literally doesn't.
stupid. Yeah.
So, and then it came out that this news came out. Of course, Pete Hegseth starts to get peppered with questions. And I'm going to ask you to pull up one more clip. I'll talk you through it though. But
Which one is
he
this?
is on he's on a Pete Hegseth's on a tarmac, and he does this one thing. He's on a tarmac. He's dressed in, like, I don't know, a cowboy rock star garb and an American flag hat. Total Department of Defense head gear. Or he's going to some nighttime concert in the woods. But and they ask him about it. He's spinning and he's stuttering. Mind you, Pete Hegseth went to, like, the Ivy League. That's it. But he went to the Ivy League. Watch this. He's going to do something, folks. And this is what this is what every person does when they're lying. They're begging you to believe them. They're begging you to believe them. And I hope you guys can figure it out. And if not, I'll tell you on the other side of this video.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
There it is, right there at the tail end when he broke the fourth wall and looked directly to the camera and said, "Nobody was texting war." I mean, bro was like, "Please believe me.
I can pay you.
Oh, no.
Please believe me." That's what people do, and that's what Trump and all them do, and that's what the right wing does, and that's what any husband that's been caught cheating his baby. I love you. I love you. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he just did. You know?
A lot of deflecting, sound like an abuser. You ever had to hear the saying like, "Wish you had the confidence of a mediocre white man." Like, imagine
Oh
like
my God.
not having any kind of he's on the job training. He's not even on the job training. He's just on the job. And I guarantee you,
Drunk.
he had some drinks. Yes, he just got off the plane and had a couple
Had a
whiskeys.
highball.
Yeah, on the rocks, right? But no, but like, can you imagine just like no experience and having no PR training, like having no idea how to one, keep secrets, but how to respond to the press and something like that, and you just that's how you respond to the press, like, bro. Like, it's a shit show, and it will continue to be a shit show. He's not going to gain these skills anytime soon. He probably thinks he doesn't need to gain any skills, and so yeah, it'll be interesting to see where do you think it's going to go.
Nowhere. I think that's the sad part is that the day incompetent white men are held to account will be the day America stops being America. These people will choose to put other people in danger. They'll choose to put service people in danger. And I think that the good part about this whole thing is that when you remove all the DEI, if you will, all the wokeness, all the whatever, it just shows the incompetence of white supremacy. It shows the incompetence of these people. It shows that they are just as this was all a power play for them to be able to have their hands on the buttons. And people will die, whether it be poor black and brown folks, or whether they be our service members, or whether they be people who are losing jobs. And we see it's on full display.
Yeah.
And only the folks who are super upset and pounding their chest and writing all these op-eds, these are the folks they know that they're exposed. And they know that this is unpopular. They know that this is dangerous. They know that they're not up to snuff.
Yeah, it's like they're hell bent on showing us why DI exists in the first place, right? Because they I'm actually gonna pull this up. I mean, look at the resume of these two.
Oh my God!
I mean,
it's a mirror image.
I mean, co-host Fox and Friends, Major, U.S. Army National Guard, Bronze Star Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Combat Infantry badge, Expert Infantry badge, Infantryman badge. Okay, he served. Great, thank you. But then you look at Lloyd Austin, right? I mean, Commanding General U.S. Forces Iraq, Vice Chief of Staff, Director of Joint Staff, Commander of the Airborne Corps, Fort Bragg, Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, Combat Action, Presidential, NATO, like, and there's more too, right? This image doesn't even show it all, right? So, but that's kind of like the essence of diversity, equity and inclusion is to find the most qualified folks in these areas where it's not just a white man, right? And this is a prime example of diversity, equity, inclusion working, right? And the reason why it was created was because there was a small pool, and underqualified, mediocre white men were able to get these jobs that like they weren't qualified for. And a lot of affirmative action used to exist because businesses had to be forced to actually hire people who weren't white men, right?
I mean, well, they saw there was a problem, and these companies or schools, they had to take an action. They had to take an affirmative action to actively hire people. They had to expand their pool, as you said earlier. So that's the whole thing. This whole fight for DEI is they want to shrink that pool back to where now that they're giving all this DEI, I better not see no unemployed white man.
And it's voluntary though now. DEI is like completely voluntary, right?
Because again, it's folks that probably these companies or institutions, these colleges that are getting rid of this stuff. They probably always want to do this, right? I always try to remind folks, liberal white people also uphold white supremacy as well. The inability to want to change the power structure, or the unwillingness to unlearn, the one too many corrections, one too many pronouns, one too many learning about history that makes you feel uncomfortable. And the thing is, they never care if we're uncomfortable. I think I was telling you the story when I was at our winter SEC meeting, and I was sitting with a group of Black women from Mecklenburg, and I was telling them about my experience as being a Black chair in Union County. And of course, as I said to Justice Earls, I know I have to fight the MAGAs, right? But like, there is this internal fight within the Democratic Party. And this sister looked at me, she's the older sister, all silver haired, beautiful woman. She looked at me and said, but have they ever asked you what it's like to be surrounded? And that never crossed my mind, because I'm always trying to, again, I know I'm fighting the battles. I'm trying to educate and trying to empower and trying to inspire. But I've never been asked, like, are you okay? Just because you're the chair, but are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything, are we acting out those ways too? Or because some folks believe that just because I vote for the Democratic Party, I too do not uphold white supremacy, like, your favorite mayor, if you will, from Monroe. These people who are actively, because only racists are against DEI, only racists are against wokeness and all this nonsense that they themselves don't understand. They themselves don't understand who they are. So I think that we're just at this moment where we have to continue to stand up and push back against this stuff, because if we don't respond, or if we don't have a more compelling message, I go back to that brother I was telling about yesterday, my alma mater. If we don't have a more compelling message as to why, you should affirmatively stand against those things, or why you should affirmatively stand with us as we're trying to create a multicultural, multiracial, pluralistic democracy, then they will win the day. And as AOC said years ago, the way we live in an attention economy, and whoever has most people, whatever most people are talking about, will win the day. And that's why I want Democrats to really, sink their heels in, and don't be afraid of this. I can't touch about positive things for these people. And again, as I was talking with Justice Earls, like during the Reconstruction era. Right, like they said these recently freed Africans. This is in 1865. We must educate these people. We must, provide healthcare to these people. We must allow them to vote. We must allow them access to the halls of power. Right, that was racial but specific things to level the playing field that was leveled against them. As Martin Luther King said, for 246 years or 250 years, this country did something positively against, this country has done something against the Negro. Now it's time for them to do something for the Negro. Mm-hmm. So you can't be like, oh, no, now we can't do anything for you, but you positively did something against us, or in the affirmative. You know what I'm trying to say. You were doing something against us for a quarter of a millennium. So now you have to do something for us for at least a quarter of a millennium, just to break even. And these folks that are fighting against that, they don't even know why they're fighting against that.
Right. Yeah, I think
the Robert Burnses of the world, they don't even understand why they hate diversity.
Right.
But they're surrounded, but they're in a county, they're in an area that's surrounded by Black people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think diversity, Senator Whitson Bradley last week said, say diversity, equity, inclusion, right?
That's right.
Dig in, right? And dig in.
That's
and
right.
Put it in their face. What does it mean? Like wokeness, right? Don't run from DI. Don't run from like woke. First off, like y'all don't even understand what it means.
They don't know, right?
Did.
Right. We still woke, and I will die woke.
Okay. So let's define what woke means, and then
right. To you, is woke means.
So you mean you want to be ignorant? You mean like, okay, or yeah, and so that's
because what's the opposite of woke? Sleep. But like what I said before, but when you're asleep, what can happen to you? I can steal from you. I can kill you. I can abuse you. I can kidnap you. That's the opposite of woke. And these folks hate woke. Look, I'll be awoke and alert, and that's what was always meant to us. And I don't need to be judged by somebody who doesn't even understand themselves, who doesn't understand his own history, who doesn't understand that he sees himself in more Jefferson Davis than in John Brown. Mm-hmm. Sir, you are a terror towards yourself. And I'm saying this because we recently got a text. Mayor Burns has made a post about us from our episode today. I sent it to you a few minutes ago with Justice Earls. But again, this is the fight we're having here. Yeah.
I can't wait to talk to him next month in 2 weeks.
Exactly. We ain't afraid.
And I invite
from no white supremacists.
And I invite everyone to listen to his podcast.
Please do.
It sounds crazy. It takes him
It's
maybe
exactly
30
what you think.
seconds. Take him 30 seconds, a minute to go into some DI woke diatribe,
Woke, CRT,
talking about
trans
liberal, like
Tifa, feminazis.
he uses the words woke about 8 times.
Don't even know what they talking about.
Liberal, left, lunatic, like
the liberals are the reason
drag. He mentions drag like 7 times. He's like,
these folks. Imagine if folks out there who listen. Imagine being so privileged in this world. The thing that you're demanding from your government is something that you don't have to attend. You're not worried about education. You're not worried about healthcare. You're not worried about housing. You're not worried about treatment equally. You're not worried about, not being poisoned. You're worried about something that is someone else's that is our First Amendment right, that you want the government to stop other people from using their First Amendment right. That is how privileged white supremacy is. And that's how pathetic these people are.
You think you walking down the street of downtown Monroe and oh shit, DI boogeyman. Oh shit, drag, another drag queen. Like
watch out for the woker, another mother woker.
And if he had to win on his qualification, he won on a coin flip.
Mayor coin flip.
If he had to win on his qualification, like he has nothing to stand on besides these social culture war issues that really mean nothing. It's like without DI and drag, he really has nothing to run on.
But they would have found something else,
Yeah, they'll find some other like culture war issue, but he won't talk about infrastructure or the betterment of the Monroe community or Monroe. He'll talk about just some wedge issue that gets his base riled up.
But does he have a base? I think the base are the people that fits in those buildings that he does the city council meetings out of. But it's just I don't want to give him too much airtime here. But I just, folks,
I'm just looking forward to 2 weeks. So because he has this little image he tries to build, and then he goes onto his podcast, and he can't help but go into, like I said, a DI woke.
He should come on this show.
I would love to have him on. Yeah, we should
talk to him. We should talk to him.
Yeah, if you're listening, or if you know
if you got
him,
some shit to say. Let's talk about it.
We can,
and
we'll be cordial.
Absolutely, no question.
Professional,
no question.
So
I want to hear where you came to this idea of white supremacy. Oh, I'm not a white supremacist. No white supremacist said they're a white supremacist, but yet there's white supremacy.
Yeah,
so it's you're part of this system or not. So I would love to have him here, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be cowed. We're not afraid of people who are afraid of themselves. We're not afraid of people who are afraid of people dressing differently. We're not afraid of people that are afraid of people that look differently. We're not afraid of people that need different access to the resources like sidewalks and buildings. We're not afraid of people that love differently. We're not afraid of people that are from different countries. So I would absolutely love to hear that perspective. And that is a challenge to him if you'd like to come on.
Yeah. One more thing before we close out. He won't come on. He's a
no.
What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Like
you wokers, liberals, leftists,
run circles around him, man.
So do you want boys and girls sports? That'll be the whole thing. Do you want boys and girls sports? Okay, see, there it is. And your whole life is wrapped around like 10 kids across the country, bro. Like, okay. Like, that's a shameful, as an adult ass man, rusty ass man. You care about some shit that don't even impact you in the slightest.
And
they got his nose so far out their ass.
In one bar that had a drag show doesn't even allow kids anymore. So it's like,
right.
Move on, dude.
First Amendment, man. Parents' rights, baby. Except for
like I said, he needs to have something to win on. So, anyways, and I don't think that whoever's opponent is should fall into that trap. But, anyways, moving on. Real quick. One other thing that we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Elise Stefanik, she's losing.
Yes.
So in Louisiana, I'm just gonna put this on the screen real quick. We got this right here. Louisiana, they had 4 amendments yesterday, and they were all considered MAGA amendments. They all 4 lost. So in Louisiana, and they're all, look at the margin, 62%, 62%, 64% in a red state. So they were worried about turnout. They actually had the governor on the hot mic with Mike Johnson talking about they were hoping turnout's 12%, but it's looking like 18. Not a good thing. So people are coming out. They got to vote. That's the main thing you got. So this tomorrow, you got this week, Tuesday, you got Supreme Court in Wisconsin. So if you know people there, make sure they're out there voting. I have a friend on the ground there. He says he's feeling good, so hopefully it stays that way. And then Florida, there's 2 special elections, 2 seats. One was Matt Gaetz, and the other one was I forget who it was before, but those
Mike Walls, the Signal Chat fame, him.
Okay, so all eyes are on Florida, but they got so scared that they basically have pulled Elise Stefanik from her administration.
Oh, can you please find that clip?
I got the clip right here. Yeah, I got the first part here. So
yes.
Congresswoman Elise Stefanik joins
folks,
me with
before
more.
we get going here,
Congresswoman,
if you can look at one thing. You look at anytime a Republican goes on Fox News and they have a smile from ear to ear that looks like it's surgically implanted on their face, they are furious. This is Elise Stefanik was doing a farewell tour to her district. She was saying, "Oh, I used to go and talk to constituents here, and oh, goodbye." She was ready for the light. She got a whole new makeover. She had found a new place. She was like, "Goodbye, shitty little condo down in D.C. I'm going to the big leagues." Because we know if you want to run for president, you need to have some international experience. All those dreams were shattered at the altar of Trump. So watch this smile.
Well, look at this.
you know, a lot of people praising your action today as selfless, as really heroic for the agenda of President Trump. I want to pull up this razor-thin House majority. This is what we were looking at here, 218 to...
So there was that one first. And then, first off...
I'll say, let that rock a little more, because that shit's funny.
Okay.
215. Yeah. Is the narrow majority, 218 to 213 rather, which means Republicans can only lose 2 votes on any given piece of legislation. A senior White House official told our Peter Ducey that when you look at this seat that you are in could have been vacant for most of the year. We don't have time to waste. They were referring to Governor Kathy Hochul.
What does it look like? That's what it looked like. And then, so we got her, let's see, here we go.
You know, President Trump, I noticed in his Truth Social today where he very much praised you and your efforts for the party. He said this at the very end: "I look forward to the day when Elise is able to join my administration in the future." It sounds like he has a spot for you down the line. Can you even put your mind there? I mean, 4 years is a long time. There's going to be a lot of turnover, a lot of spots that open, Elise.
Well, the president is going to continue to deliver just incredible results. He has had a nearly perfect first few months and has just done a tremendous job on delivering what he campaigned on. And I was proud to be by his side campaigning all across the country, making sure we held this House majority, specifically focus on fighting back against the politicization and the illegal weaponization of the witch hunts stemming from New York State. I will continue to do that. He knows that. And I look forward to continuing to serve in different ways. And Kayleigh, while I've been in the House quite a long time, I am proud to still be one of the youngest members, although I'm very happy that there are younger ones too. But this will be my 11th year in the House, and I have a long ways to go and will continue to speak out and use my voice to help the American people and stand up and support the president.
The white people.
Well, adios.
We understand when they say American or people or teachers or voters. Folks, please be reminded when conservatives say that the silent word they're leaving out is white. They do not mean all people.
And then here's how the segment ends. So they gotta make her feel good.
What they say?
Well, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, you're being praised as a selfless warrior, and I look very much forward to seeing what the bright future holds for you. Thank you so much.
Toodles.
Oh, please, just get me off this goddamn camera. Please, let me get off this fucking camera.
So it's working, and also the Tesla. They had a Tesla protest yesterday, and they have protests. Not
Tesla,
but April 5th next week, next Saturday, there's going to be protests all over the place.
White
there's one
folks
in Monroe, there's
involved.
Charlotte, yes. But
white folks,
if
same for you.
And the Tesla ones are working, so y'all keep doing that.
White folks get out there.
So Tesla,
I'm serious about.
Yeah,
hey,
I know.
I'm gonna cut you off, but it's serious. We done the marches. We done been hosed. We done been. It is time. Yep. It is time. Our community did not bring this atrocity to bear. So white folks who are pissed off, y'all ain't mad enough. I keep saying it. get out there April 5th. Black folks, do your line dances, get your fans, go to brunch. This ain't for us. White folks get involved.
But yeah, keep doing the Tesla ones, because if Tesla ones weren't working, then Elon wouldn't be on all over the TV crying and bitching and moaning, and Pam
empathy.
Biondi, whatever. They wouldn't be making threats, talking about, if you say anything bad about Tesla or whatever it is, then we're coming after you.
A company. Could you imagine them saying, like, if you say anything bad about McDonald's?
Trump wouldn't be out on the White House lot, the used car lot. Selling.
It's all computers. It's all computers.
And they want people to be violent so bad, but it's all having a negative effect.
That's what I'm saying. Black folks,
you know who's burning up down Teslas? Germany. And if hey, that's your thing, then whatever. Over in Germany.
Look, as I said last episode, the Tesla takedown is a global thing. So this whole idea of this is just some liberals on the left. Then why is it happening in Germany? Why is it happening in the UK? Why is it happening in other countries where this quote unquote left? And again, America has never been a left country. Please just get that through your brains. I don't care who the president was. This country has never been left. It's always been a right-wing country. So the Mayor Burnses of the world who are pissed about it, it's always been your country. It's always been your country. It's just the lies of this country have always been shown when people are like, well, why are these Negroes here? Well, why are these queer folks, why are they talking about their rights have not been adjudicated? And one thing I did want to bring up with Justice Earls was that, Sherlyn Ifill, who gave us a shout out before we even got started here, was the idea that civil rights work is democracy maintenance. It's saying, hey, y'all said this, but y'all ain't living up to that. You're maintaining, you're doing the maintenance work to make sure this shit is what y'all said it was. And it says for everybody that you said it was for. And it hasn't lived up to those ideals. So this was another great show. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with Justice Earls. It's always great talking to you, man. And yeah, we're gonna try to do some different stuff here. If folks out there, if y'all are still watching and you enjoy, we're looking for a producer, so someone to kind of do what Rom's doing right now, doing the clicking and bringing up the clips. And of course, we'd love to hear your perspective throughout the episode. A few comments or so. But that's what we're looking for: someone to help us grow this thing. We've been growing at an exponential rate. Robert Burns can suck it. He definitely can't grow at our clip and speed. And I would bring that up if he came on the show. That he is not growing like us. So we're looking for somebody to actually come on and help us out. So if you do know someone that is technically savvy or not, I'm sure we could teach you. Rom needs to teach me, and then I can teach you. Each one teach one. Yeah, so we'll let this thing grow. And please like, share, subscribe. Make sure you tell some folks. Make sure you let them know this is an unfiltered, but also still honest and deeply rooted in community, and deeply rooted in the people who do not have a voice, people who aren't in the halls of power, like a mayor taking his Sunday night to try to downplay a podcast. Yeah, I'm pissed about it, low key. But
well, hey, check out his, because he needs some likes, but he needs some views,
folks.
But also, I know people should listen to it, because
they should
and listen to what he's saying, because he
sounds.
Is
that normal?
Yeah, and because hear it for yourself, like.
Are we? Who's crazy?
And so,
what guest does he have on? Is he having on justices? Is he having on Congress people? I don't know. I mean, I know he's a mayor, but is he having on people they're trying to move this country in which direction? Ask yourself.
The DEI boogeyman, maybe he will.
He may have the boogeyman on,
or maybe we can be the.
Oh, absolutely! Shaking in his WEI boots. But folks, thank you for catching us today on this Radical Roots podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, let other folks know, and we always dig deep to reach out. And there's always progress through action. 582 days till midterm elections. I am your co-host, Payron Baxter.
I'm your co-host, Ram Sandoval. Take care, everybody.